Welcome to Heartbeat on Zimpaper's television network, your show on all things health and developmental, because your health is your wealth. My name is Robert Mkundiwa. Now, thanks to our partners, the UNFPA, who are actually new partners on board this series. And of course, thanks to SAYWHAT and the Swedish Embassy in Zimbabwe for continuing and sponsoring this program and helping amplify the voices of millions of people who would otherwise not have a voice and say in things and issues that affect their very own lives. Now in studio today, we're privileged to be hosting a COVID-19 survivor whose wife and 2 children have also recovered from the virus. We also have a representative from Youth Advocates who now, I understand, going global and no longer Youth Advocates Zimbabwe. Now that's an organization that is working with young people who are infected and affected by COVID-19. Before I go further, I will actually allow them to introduce themselves and their place in the young people matrix that we're discussing today. I'll start with the gentleman. Introduce yourself and welcome to the show.
Thank you. My name is Sosa Kujwa. I stay in Zimbabwe Park. Yes.
Thank you for joining us, and we are all very happy that you have recovered from COVID-19. Of course, we have seen you in a number of platforms on our ZTN platforms, and we're very happy that you and your family have all recovered successfully.
Yeah, sure.
And the lady.
Hello, my name is Rufaro Magaza. I'm the helpline coordinator for Youth Advocates. We run a helpline 393 platform where young people call in. It's 24/7, every day, anytime, midnight, in the morning, in the afternoon, there's someone to talk to you. So we usually, basically before the COVID-19, we're giving information on sexual reproductive health and linking them to services. But with the coming of COVID-19, we realized that COVID-19 affects young people's reproductive health and access to reproductive health. So it had to be incorporated in our programming.
Absolutely, and we on our previous programs have been talking about that very strong correlation between SRHR issues, that sexual and reproductive health and rights, and of course COVID-19. I'm absolutely glad to have the both of you here.
Thank you.
Now we will also be joined virtually by a student, Neditanga, as we go on in the show. Now today we introduce a new topic, the lived realities of young people and COVID-19, as we continue to give young people a voice in this era. Now, COVID-19 has not spared this generation. They have not only been affected, but have also been infected by this pandemic. There has been talk that government, for example, wants to reopen universities, observing social distancing guidelines for especially final year students. We have been interrogating that thought over the past couple of episodes, if you remember, and questioning the wisdom or lack thereof of that idea. The assumption has been that the students will be negative and will be in their best interest to write and finish their degree courses. But again, we have been proven right. How? Well, news last week vindicated us because 3 final year students at the National University of Science and Technology in Bulawayo tested positive for COVID-19. They had been tested in a class of 21. Now, imagine if they had not been tested. The results could have been catastrophic. Now, can the government test 300 development studies final year students, for example, in Midland State University because the classes can get that big? Well, your guess is as good as mine. Now, following that revelation of the 3 positive tests in Bulawayo, the Heartbeat team, through the support of its partners, most notably SAYWHAT and the UNFPA, went to Bulawayo to track the trio. Now, the medical students who are still processing all this, trying to understand what this infection means to their lives, spoke off camera, sharing their fears. The students who are all in their final years hope that finishing school in the next few weeks would have been something that they wanted, but that has been suspended. Now, the school for the other 21 has also been suspended for the next 2 weeks because the university is still processing the developments. Now, let's see what Bulawayo had for us. And we're here in Bulawayo at the Elangeni Institute of Training and Development. Of course, it is here that many returnees are being housed. Many of them are being found to be COVID-19 positive after being tested. It is also here that there are 3 students who came back hoping to finish school as medical students. But unfortunately, when they were tested, they tested positive. Of course, we are not going to be giving you further details because of confidentiality issues, but it is here that they stay, obviously traumatized, obviously trying to come to grips with the fact that indeed they are positive, and they were looking forward to writing their examinations, but that is a dream deferred. And what irony, what greater irony is there than being housed here at Elangeni, which means the sun. But certainly, at the moment, there is no sunshine in their academic lives. And indeed, that's what we came across when we went to Bulawayo. And I'll come into the studio, and I'll start with you, Mr. Sakujika. These are young people, they're students, they went, got tested, and had to come to, with that grim reality that they're positive. As somebody who was one of the first people to test positive in Zimbabwe, what do you think they're going through? What fears are these young men going through?
Yeah, thank you. I know that they are in big problem because as young people, they had other people that are dying every day in other countries, so they are living in fear. But I want to give them hope that they have to give everything before God. They will be saved.
And they were really scared to speak about this. And you've also had your two sons test positive. As a parent, what do you do to help your children come to terms with COVID-19 and to come to terms with the fact that they have to fight it and that they can actually win in that fight?
Yeah, I sit down with them. I talked to them. I told them that, because since I was the first person to get this virus, I told them that you will be okay. Don't be afraid. So they take that advice, and that had in mind that I know we will survive. Thank God that they were not that very much affected because it was very mild. So it would help them. They didn't even use any medication. They were just doing the exercises. That's what they were doing, yes.
Okay. And you've got a helpline. We saw very, very traumatized people there. The three are traumatized. There they are, they're going back to school. They're thinking, we're just going to write. We're a small class of 21. And medicine is after a lot of investment in terms of time. And all of a sudden, they cannot write, but they've been tested positive for a very, very dangerous disease. You are manning that helpline. What are you telling people in that instance, in that circumstance?
Okay, we do understand that coronavirus is a new stream of virus, and all over the world, everyone is stressed as to how do we deal with this virus. And right now, young people are battling with loss, because these young people are saying, we came here to write our examinations. We were safe at home. We were not moving. But then just movement from our home to school, we get the virus. So many things start moving in people's minds. Where is my life going to go? So it's important for young people to take one day at a time, not to overthink, because sometimes it's the stress that actually makes things worse, because they're now brooding on things that might not be. But let's focus on getting better today, and then tomorrow will take care of itself. It sounds like we're saying a cliche statement, but right now with coronavirus, that's the best that we can do. Let's take care of today. Let's take care of ourselves today. Let's do what the medical practitioners are telling us to do, and then we'll see what tomorrow holds. Because I know as young people, they will be thinking, I'm here to write my exams. Am I going to write the examination with my fellow students? Does this mean I'm going to defer for a year? What does this mean for my future financially as well? Do I have, when I go back to school, am I going to have to pay again school fees? So there are a lot of things. And then there's the acceptance in society. Are people going to accept me back in society? Even if I'm going to get better from this virus, are people going to accept me? And if they don't accept me, then what is going to become of me? Remember, human beings, we are social animals. We need to be accepted. So all those things are things that are going through the minds of a young person, especially a young person who's thinking of forming a relationship. You know, there's so many things that's moving on social media. Now it's sexually transmitted. Even if someone has had it and has been cleared, there's this, there's that, there's this. So you find that they're trying to form relationships with their peers, romantic relationships. There's so many things that go on in their minds. So we're just encouraging them to take one day at a time, focus on getting better, and then we'll focus on other things.
Okay, absolutely. And we actually went Kwavasakudga and we saw the kids and we talked to them. And as you're saying, to some of them, we are social animals. And pretty much that's basically, especially Kelvin, that's what he was telling us, Kuti. Like right now, we're going to have clips that we're going to show of Kelvin and his brother. But they were saying, you can use our names, we are telling our stories, but we just don't want our faces to come out. We don't mind about the name, we don't mind what Baba is going on television and that sort of thing. But what we just don't want is to have that association. Neuti one in the society, what will they say to the children? And perhaps Kwamuri Mimi, did it affect Vanamurgo say at the moment?
Well, now, at the moment, they are now happy. Everything is now back to normal.
But maybe the people in the society, I'm not going to any of that stigma.
Yeah, the stigma is there, even from relatives. There is there. But I told them, no, don't worry. It's a phase. It will come to pass one day, because this virus is starting, and we don't know tomorrow who will be affected. So I see people you laugh at you because one day you'll be okay.
Absolutely. So through the support of the UNFPA and SAYWHAT, for example, and the Swedish Embassy, we also managed to visit the sons of Saul Sakujga, as I had hinted on, and they also recovered from COVID-19. Now, the boys share their lived experiences, but because of stigma associated with the virus, they have requested that we do not show their faces. Now, Devin Sakujga chronicled about their experience when they first got the news that their father was infected, and this is what he had to say.
First time we had it, it was just terrible because the Harare City guys came, called. They actually called when we were at his office and said, the results came and you were positive. And I remember there was just silence in the office. There were about 4 of us, me, my mom, my little brother, and my dad. And at that time, he was. Those days, I think there were about 3 days past when he was tested. Then the results came back the 3rd day. So we actually relaxed. Even him, he was now saying, I now feel a little bit better because of that. But when the results came, it became even worse. And as for me, I was even worse because I was shaking. I thought it was the end. That was the only thing that came to my mind, that I'm going to die. Then, but I was the only one who was, because my mom, I looked at her face, it was terrible. My little brother, even worse. So what happened, so the situation was that I was the only one who was going to drive us back home. So I drove us, we went to Nazareth, and we went there, and actually we found there was no one. There was no doctors, no anything. And they even informed us that we should go back to Wilkins. And at that time, Wilkins was being renovated. So we went to Wilkins, and to Wilkins, they said we're renovating, we cannot take the patient in, we cannot admit any patients, so we have to go back home with him. So we actually went back home with him, and we already knew that he was positive. And I had my friends calling me that night, and I was driving. They were calling me saying, we saw some ambulances at your gate. People, they were fumigating. Does it mean you all have coronavirus? And you know the panic, everyone was panicking. Everyone who had been in contact with me was panicking, and some of the friends were actually blaming me that you knew, but you didn't tell us. But well, it wasn't my fault. So some of them, I wasn't even answering their calls. I would ignore. And we went back home. The second day, my dad, the Harare City Council, they came at our place. They took my dad and they went with them to Nazareth infectious disease.
Well, there you have it. Vasakujga, you heard what was going on in the lives of your kids. And there's always that thing, blame. And how did you feel as a parent? Did mama famba out of the country to bring food on the table, and then all of a sudden you're said to have brought a disease that everyone is dreading? How did you feel as a parent? I
feel very sorry for them, because even my friends they were no longer comfortable to walk with them, to talk with them. But ndakangoudza kuti no guys, ngatingo garitiri muno muyadi medu, God is on our side. So they accepted, and takanzwanana tikafamba zvakadaro tikawirirana semhuri.
And then pane my neighbors, that side, what was the vibe kubva kune my neighbors?
My neighbors, they never said anything, but instead they were helping us. Moral support chayo waitipa, but kuti munhu azosvike unongochingoona kuti pane kagap. Action speaks louder than words. Taingoona kuti there is a gap zvataita kare neizvo tatiri kuita, but I could blame them because of what was on the ground. Saka ndakangowata kuti no, it's okay. Even up to now, others havasida kupinda even muyadi medu. Varongotyira kure, vanongotambira ngokukwazisa vari kure. So we said it's okay. Yeah.
And you heard this, Kuti, you heard the boys as they were speaking, that trauma of all of a sudden other people saying you deliberately came into contact with me knowing Kuti, and yet that wasn't the case. How do you speak to the youth to also not only deal with the trauma of getting infected, but also having fingers pointed at them and people saying you deliberately went around and tried to get us infected as well?
That's the major issue even on the helpline, that we now having people anonymously calling. Someone border jumped from South Africa, someone came from South Africa, they have coronavirus. They don't even know, they've not even have a conversation with the person to see, did this person go through the quarantine centers? Did they jump the borders? They don't do that. They just call and then they just say they have coronavirus, come and take them out of the community. So the blame game, it's there, it's real. Again, you have to just talk to the person that you're counseling. Encourage them that, did you know? Because the question is, did the person know? Did they willingly do anything to put other people in danger? If not, let's work with that. Because honestly, we also tell our young people that you do not have control over what another person feels or says about you, but you have control over what you feel or what you think and what you allow other people to say. They say you can allow birds to fly over your head, but once they build a nest, then lay eggs, now it's difficult. So do not even allow that to formulate in your life. If you did not do anything intentionally, remember, maybe this person also got infected. They don't even know how they got infected. So trying to deliberately infect someone, that's too harsh. You know how people are, it's just too harsh. So I do understand, but it's one thing to tell someone, don't allow it to control your life. And it's totally another thing when you're the person in that situation. It's just difficult, it's stressing, it's depressing.
We also went to Bulawayo some 6-8 weeks ago, and we came across another family that was COVID-19 positive. I think all 5 of them. And we also saw that story also recurring, where people are saying that actually came out in the newspaper that and on various news platforms that this person knew she was COVID-19 positive, and she was deliberately going around her business exposing other people, and the amount of stigma and the amount of hurt. And she's a student, and this is the story of the student right now, that it's young people who are supposed to actually be dealing with other things, getting an added stress. But you actually came up with a different angle, because while we look at these people who call you and say so-and-so is COVID-19 positive, come and get them away, as people who are spreading alarm, despondency, for example. But they're also traumatized, because to make that call, they're scared of people. That means there's a paranoia going around, and that also means that they also need some help.
Yes, like as a community, you know what, it's true. We all need help. Mental health issues matters, because we don't know where you're going to get coronavirus. Should I stay inside? Should I go outside? When I go outside, is 1 meter far enough? If I'm in the queue for fuel, if I'm in the queue to get meal, if I stand 1 meter away, is someone not going to go in front of me? You see, there are just a lot of things. If I'm going to be in the queue for sugar and I want to go, is the space? And it's so funny that people are continuously saying, they play the blame game. You were moving around. But when you go to the shops and people are in queues and standing in queues for basic commodities like meal and sugar, they are packed together.
Oh, yeah.
They're not maintaining that social distancing. So even when we now want to trace contact, how do you trace it?
Yeah.
How do you trace? You don't even know the person you were standing next to. So everyone is traumatized. We no longer know how to deal with coronavirus as a community, but we need to support each other. And I think the whole notion of social distancing, people took it far. When we say social distancing, we meant physical distancing, not crowding. But you need to maintain relationships. You need to stay in contact with people who are your support systems. That's the only way we can make it throughout this pandemic.
Beautifully said, because we also had somebody in mental health who was saying we actually used the wrong term when we decided to say social distancing. It's supposed to be physical distancing, and we should at least actually now stay socially more connected, because we now need each other more than ever in this age of coronavirus. But of course, we shall also be looking at what the boys told us with regards the testing processes and their families, and how the family dynamics have been. But this is something we're going to be exploring after the break, because we have a word on COVID-19, and we shall return in a heartbeat. Now, before that heartbeat of a break, we were talking about how the Sakujga children were managing with COVID-19. Now, Devon, he further shared with us how the news that he, his mother and brother were also infected. He feared that the virus would wipe out his entire family, leaving behind his younger siblings.
My dad has been tested positive, so I think for now, because I was having like flu-like symptoms, so I told them, I don't think it's good for me to come to work. Let me just stay home. So then no, it's okay. Until you feel like you are now okay. So the second day after my dad was taken, that's when we were tested, and the results came, I think, a day after, saying me and my mom and my little sister, my little brother were all positive. But at that time we were 9 at our place. Papa and 2 mummies, my cousin, and 2 of my young siblings. So that's 9. But when I was test for 5, they were negative. So like, because the virus, what came into what when it was the stress, because the videos that I want by internet, by YouTube, coronavirus, the only mind you're dead. That's the only thing. So my little brother, I test one negative, my little sister, stress young because if Pafio, Dad is going to die, my mom is going to die, me, my little brother, Ali 21 is going to die. So my 13-year-old brother, my little sister, 9 years. So stress. So how are they going to survive? Then the test was positive, TB4 Then we then decided because we used to share my rooms, but from then we then decided very positive, what you share my rooms very big, and takata atichade kushare kana even ndikajikira my plate yandinenge ndajikira yaichinzifera mvura inopisa jik nchichi manero taimwa malemon, boiled lemons and garlic and ginger zvakazangana zvaisatombomika because nehoney taingomunzi zvese maremedies ese atangonzwa achitaurwa nevanhu, we were taking them. Atangonzwa ginger, then vitamin C's tablets taimwa, minimum tablets akawanda taingomwa, and for those 21 days my doctors vaiuya vachititesta.
So there we have it, that fear yekushika kuti ndakufa. Bana ningichawasiya say 2 days ago I was in Bulawayo with that family that's recovered, and they actually tell me their youngest, because they didn't know, there was a lot of misinformation back then that if you're this age you will not get COVID-19, and they just saw a whole family dying, leaving behind that youngest child, and they'd actually said they talked to family kuti musarimichitora mwana when we die, and manga goera huku chi everything, clothes, and today they're laughing about it because they recovered, and they're saying, you know what, but at that moment that fear was very, very real. You went through that process, looking at Vana, your youngest, and thinking, am I really going to die in Jisiala now? What was going through your mind? How did you deal with it?
Well, for me, I never thought the whole family is going to be wiped out. Because of the age. I thought our Shirwadik, they will survive. Even Pandakanzwa, they are now positive in the hospital. I didn't panic, hysteric. Because Zandanda Kunzwa, if I'm surviving, there's no kufa. It means our come now, they are okay. Sarafi enges nakunya kuanda. Mandiri. That's why I managed to talk to them when I get home back. Ndakagara now pasi ndikati no guys, zvinoita, let's give everything before God and Mwari vachatibatsira. And nguva iyoyo zvakatibatsira kuti tise scale yedu pamberi yekunamata chaiyo. We started kunamata zvataisamboita mamwe mazuva, and kubva ipapo up to now takabva tangotora that stance yekuti tinamati.
Absolutely. And so we're getting good feedback from you here. Some people, Divine Magutsa is saying, get well soon to the students, the 3 students we were talking about in Bulawayo. Dumisile Tuwe says, I feel like these students will face a lot of stigmatization. That alone can affect them a lot. And I understand where they are coming from, really. Divine Magutsa says, the pandemic ought not to be a cause of stigmatization, and says, stop stigma, ye corona. We're also getting feedback from you, Lawrence Zuda, saying the recovery of Mr. Sakujga is a signal that if we take the advice of the health experts while banking on the family support, we can survive the pandemic. So you're giving a lot of hope to a lot of people who are actually following and watching with us today. Dumi comes again and says, some symptoms are worsened by psychological trauma. I believe it is best to keep calm once you receive the news, because mental stability is a necessity. Thank you, Dumi. Please keep those comments coming through. Simbarashe Blessed Stole is asking that an average person would get stressed after testing positive of COVID-19, and what measures are being taken to ensure these students continue with their studies if they test positive and get quarantined. I'm keen to know the procedures. Well, at the moment in Bulawayo, the whole class has had been stopped until these 3 recover. But as you're saying, very important question, because going forward we really need those foolproof methods to make sure that life doesn't stop because of COVID-19, because obviously it's unfair on those who are positive, but it's also unfair on the negative people who will have looked at finishing their exams, for example, and finishing their studies. And Ellen Tendai Mashaya, again, you're inspiring a lot of people. Thank you so much for bringing Mr. Sakujga on this session. This is living proof that we can survive this COVID-19. And Princess Chauke, this is something you'd really understand from your line of work. The depression comes as soon as someone tests positive, and I think the only way to overcome that is to keep in touch with health practitioners and our social circles in order to reduce the trauma. Stigmatization also worsens the situation. And finally, Eamon Gadza says, understanding how the virus operates is also important. And as you were saying, we need to get more and more socially connected because of COVID-19, and rather than what we are actually doing, we're actually socially distancing ourselves from one from the other.
You know, it's a tragedy, honestly, because the moment you stop talking to the person, to the people who make your days light up, it just makes it difficult. And even when a friend or a family member or a classmate tests positive for coronavirus, instead of shunning them, we know that everyone around them is traumatized. The classmates are traumatized, maybe are positive, maybe the test just doesn't show that we are also positive because we've been socializing with them. The question of finishing education, they traveled to Bulawayo, maybe they don't all stay in Bulawayo, they traveled to Bulawayo. They had to go back home. They have to travel back to Bulawayo. Financial issues are coming into play. But they need to be connected more than ever, the positive and the negative ones. Giving each other moral support to make it through the process. Because I'll tell you honestly, what the other one said, that depression is the #1 thing that will make the symptoms worse. Mental health issues are the things that make the symptoms worse. Because when you feel like no one wants you, no one wants to associate with you, no one will ever want to be around you, the next question is, what should I live for?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Now, there also, back to the Sakujga family, the 24-year-old Devon further knows how loss of samples during retests traumatized them, because whenever they'll be tested, sometimes they'll be told that the samples have been lost. Let's hear what he would say about that very, very old thumbs approach by our authorities.
Unfortunately, takatorwa chechi2 chekupedzera media my equipment yacho anouusa kutera matests yakarasika madoctors ati vari on their way to the clinic. So actually the process yacho yekutorwa matest yacho yaingorwadza, so because there is like chisyringe chakakura kudai, so chinenge chipidzwa nemweyo and yairwadza saka takatanga kugara kuti the fourth time futi chitorwa matest iwayo. But anyway, then the fourth time, it's negative.
How about that? When you're getting tested, I mean, you really can't make this up. Authorities losing samples, and as Devon is saying, I'm told that because this was the rapid test, that test is very intrusive and very uncomfortable. And I was talking to the 10-year-old in Bulayo who also got COVID-19 and they recovered. They literally are still afraid, and they still have the trauma. And every time the youngest, who is 3, imagine doing that to a 3-year-old, the whole intrusive test. The 3-year-old, Zanzi, now if she just hears a car at the gate, she just doesn't want to see a car at the gate because those guys are back again with their intrusive material. How did you handle that? Because there must be some semblance of anger, because I would literally blow my top. And all of a sudden you're telling me, oh, we've just lost those samples, can we do it again?
Yeah, it happened. Sure. We were tested. It was my last test. It was their first test. I don't know what happened, because if they take that sample, they put them in liquid. So the liquid is the thing, the yakarasika along the way, not the whole thing was lost. The liquid in the yakarasika was dry. So they had to come back again. So it was not good for them, because words are, but not much. Okay. But we are now yeah.
Yeah, I think that's another challenge that we are having, and people do call on the helpline complaining that results are coming late. They've been tested, it's been 2 weeks, they have not received their results. Some have gone for 3 weeks, or they've been linked to rapid response teams and they have not come to test them. But some of the issues will not be beyond the team's control as well. The teams will also be battling with issues of test kits, fuel to go to the homes of the people who need to be tested. So it is a challenge that is true and that is on the ground. Results come late, or they need to be tested over and over again. Even people in quarantine centers are now complaining. Those who were quarantined initially when the quarantine centers started are complaining that people who came after them are getting their results, but they are not getting their results. It's an issue that is true and the issue that is on the ground. We just hope that it can be rectified as quickly as possible so that people don't need to stay in quarantine centers longer than necessary. And if they need to go home, they go back home. Because like I said before, in those quarantine centers, they are not hotels. You are stuck in a room, in a hostel room. There is no entertainment. You only have your phone. You can't even talk face to face with your peers or with your family members. So it's stressful. It's stressful on the people in the quarantine centers. And then just to be told that your results cannot be found, we have to do a retest. And someone who came after you received their results, it's stressful. So we're just hoping that the authorities, the relevant authorities, rectify that, ensure that people's mental health, because again, it's stressful. I'll tell you the truth. If someone who came, because the question now will be, with Zimbabwe and how people are always talking about corruption, they'll be like, this person, sakani wa anoziva.
Well, certainly these are some of the challenges that young people and especially our students who have tested positive are going through where they are. We visited 3 in Bulayo at Elangeni Center, and of course they are still in an absolute state, and they're very, very traumatized. Now, we earlier were looking at the life of the young Sakujga siblings, and they were telling us what they were going through. Now, the 21-year-old Devon also shares his experience when the father got infected. how they moved from one hospital to the other with their patient who was being turned away as health workers cited lack of personal protective equipment, those PPEs.
Ipapo zvinhu vanhu vese vanga vatonyarara vatoona kutoti zvinhu zvaipa because vangagara nemasymptoms vanana flu vachingokosora zvisinganzwisike. Saka semunhu angaenda kunze kwenyika angafanira kuteswa. So patikaenda kuNazareth kweko takasvika tikatenderera tichitsvaga kwekuenda tikashaya, then patazoona vamwe doctor vachitoti tiri kufanira kudzokera kuWilkins because paNazareth papa pasati pane equipment yekuti munhu ane COVID anokwanisa kubetserwa. So we had to go back futi kuenda kuWilkins because doctor vedu kuti havatorina clothing equipment yekuti vangazviprotect ivo. So takabva tatonzi dzokerai muendai kuWilkins. Tichisvika kuWilkins kuya takaenda negedhi rinopinda mota bataona rakakiwa, then bataenda nerinobuda ndokwa kune magadhi. So takabvunza magadhi kuti tafonerwa chichichi tanzi tuye nepatient, then magadhi andobva atidzoserera pagedhi zvikatonzi hapanapa sezvamuri kutoona tiri kuburutsa equipment zvinhu zvichiri kutoitwa marenovations kuita sei. So kuno ukasati kutombogamuchira vanhu vanofanira kuenda kuNazareth, ufuchi kuNazareth kwacho ndokwatatanga patanzi dzokerai. So takatobva tatongoona kuti hapana kwekuenda patatoti ngatidzokerei kumba, and that was about past 6 ndopatakadzokera kumba. Kutosvika kunoku vanhu vanga pane ambulance yanga yasvika kunoku kudhara. So vanhu tatagara takutonzwa news vanhu vachifona kuti taona ambulance pamba penyu. Vanhu veCovid response team vanga varipo pakumba chichichi handidi. So patikasvika kunoku takatosvika vanhu vanga variko kunoku because tine mavisitors. One angabva kunyanga, then 2 angabva kunyanga, then musikana wategara naye. So vanga vari about 5 vanga varipo panapo vanga vasara, then isusu 4 vangoenda town. So patikasvika takatosvikira vatopiwa mamask, vatopiwa chichichi, ndopatikasvika kumba.
So those are the traumatic lived realities by young people, our young people who are infected. Now, those were actually infected by COVID-19. Of course, over this series, we have been talking about how students have been affected, but we had not roped in those who were actually infected. How we actually have their father, one of the first cases of COVID-19 in Zimbabwe. UNFPA, and we want to give special thanks to them, and of course to say on health and wellness issues. Affected young woman, and when we get in touch with her, she shall be joining us and those in the studio. For joining me, and thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Could you just tell us, because we've been talking about how these students have been infected. You are not personally infected, but you are seriously affected by the fact that COVID-19 has hit in this year. Can you give us
Hello?
Yes, could you go ahead and just tell us
I've been affected by COVID-19 because, like, you actually realize, like, currently I'm at school. I'm now learning the whole thing in just 48 hours. So I realized that we began lectures 48 hours. So when it comes to academic, we're greatly affected. Then also highlighting more on academics is final years we're doing projects, and you realize that most of the components that of the borders are closed. So realize that we cannot purchase individual. I actually feared for my life, because I remember when we finished school, I couldn't move because I was afraid of the implications of corona, because
some students who were infected, and the universities, certain colleges will have to open, especially for those who are writing the final year students, and they'll have to go observe social distancing and what have you. To discontinue. Do you think you would be comfortable going back to school to write your examinations, for example, as the government is saying, when we're hearing these stories that some amongst the final year students may actually be infected?
Truly speaking, in my case, I'm actually at school. I'm at HEAT. And to be very honest with you, I don't feel. So we don't know what's going on.
And how do you handle that? Because I know because it's very traumatic. It's traumatic on your mental. And this scared.
My family, to my lecturers. So you realize that most of our lecturers are actually putting effort for us. I learn in class, they are like very critical to the industry. So they are actually giving us support. I'm also getting support from my family. I'm also getting support from my friends as well.
Nedi, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Do not get through that very horrific phase of being infected, or indeed having people around you being infected. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
So there you have it. That it would. She's not going out that much. She's fortunate, she says, that she's got a support system, Yakakura. Today, you're Baba Wenyika.
Gawango wene focus. I know health authorities in the government. ndifambe stereki. Ndine izvo ndoda kutaura pane vamwe ndakanzwa vachitaura rimwe zuva vakomana vachidiki vachiti kana wakabayiwa inonzi chi nomba ameno yakasobayiwa yanga iri smallpox zviyanai zvanzi haubatwe ayo ngatirege kunyeperana ipapo. Inini ndakabayiwa asi ndakabatwa nayo. And as a country ngatibatirane pamwe chete tingoite zviri kutaurwa.
Absolutely, because there's a lot of misinformation going around, as of course I was citing earlier on how the lady in Bulawayo was telling me how she thought her youngest was immune because the youngest was only 3, and yet anyone can catch the virus. Even in the beginning we were told that black people do not get infected, and I would have been the luckiest person being the darkest person. But and then it just became so a lot of misinformation, and there's some severity of the virus until he started watching news and seeing how the pandemic was wreaking havoc across the world.
Yeah, first time patakatanga kuiona because the noticed kwa jasungo kuti angi ari safe ango ari ku safe side. So patakatanga kandranya chinguti but ndiwe tisati takuzoti iri serious. Serious. Isusu tangotu zvinoitika kubatwa ndo achatichengeta tisingazivi zvichiitika kumbiri kuzivisa vangu vabatwa vacho ndo vakuru vepamba and vangu vasara vacho vangu vasara 1 form 3 1 grade 5 so ufuichisaka tongoti vakuru vacho vese tingarigidze kuti tingaite sei kuti isa spread.
Of course, you heard there that he was at the beginning not sure what he was dealing with. He just thought it was just one of those things until he had to research and see the seriousness. So indeed, we are seeing people who have recovered. They are giving us inspiration to know that you can recover, but it shouldn't make us complacent and say, well, if he as a nation, and of course spreading rapidly, affecting those that of course is something, a fact we've been talking about here, especially amongst our youth and the family that was telling us of their lived realities. And we also went to Bulawayo to talk to people. What do you see going forward?
Researching on the internet, it's important to research Research, it's okay to research, but be careful with yourself, because sometimes you put yourself under unnecessary pressure. Aware of what is happening in Zimbabwe. What are we doing? What are the measures that with our friends? But let's just hold on. Let's hold on. If we all comply, it will. And our families at risk. And if you do not know anything, one thing that I would encourage is, if you don't know anything, if you're going under stress, we are encouraging young people right now to do. Let's comply with
covered and are grateful for the new lease of life, as it were. The brothers note finally that the stigma and misinformation are some of the great
I to drive a motor, I don't pour on street and it. I don't too close or there so. Seriously. Saka baona kusvika apa baona kuti pane zvinenge zviri kuita. But vanhu kuti I to drive a motor, I don't pour on street and it. I don't too close or there so. Ndobvaona kuti pakamira ambulance pamakapaka vanhu paside neroad. Pane zvinenge zviri kuitika areti. Ndobva waona munhu uye akutoisa reverse adzokera chimanya. Ndobva tatotanga kutoseka kuti unoye munhu chichichi. But vanhu kutotambura kure kwaitoita stigmatization yakashata zvingaiti, because vanhu havana ku munobata sei munhu kana akarikavha apora kana kuti ndingashandisa wedrek tichi iro rikavhari racho inotombozviexplaina rega, but vanhu havana kunyatsoridzidziswa kunzi zvinorevei kuti munhu arikavha, because pane vamwe vanhu vekutoti unogona kungonzwa rikavha ba unogona kutoona kuti mwe munhu mamurisa ari kuita kana kuti matauriro ari kuita newe ari kutoratidza kukutya and stuff. So vanhu vanonyatsodzidziswa, vanhu vada kunyatsodzidziswa kunzi kana munhu anzi arikavha anenge angofanana niwe usina kubatwa uri negative.
In this response to COVID-19, just quickly, Clemi Vidic Jr. and Takuzwa Chiambakwe, of course, always watching with us. And certainly it's been a very illuminating session that we've had today. That we can see and we see a story, because he and his entire family have recovered. Thank you, Vasakudga, for joining. Again, can you just repeat that number that young people, our students, can call if they need
free anytime?
Thank you so much. And thank you, too, for gracing me here on Heartbeat. Well, of course, that is all we have.